good morning. It's a Monday, it's 11 o'clock, it's Dublin City FM. And so, of course, it must be me, Gillian Gottsell, Making a Difference, where each week I talk to people who literally make a difference, sometimes small, sometimes big, and sometimes bizarre, and sometimes very, very needful. And the man that I'm talking to today comes under the needful bracket, and quite famous too as well, as we discover during our call, making headlines as he goes along. But Aubrey McCarthy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Gillian, for having me.
Well, I'm delighted to meet you. I met you last summer. We did a book launch in Rise of the Cove, which is part of what you do, the Tigan. It's actually a cafe, which is an amazing cafe. It's not just a cafe for people in Tigan. It's actually a cafe, a destination cafe in its own right. So it's amazing. But before we get on to that, you have a lifetime in volunteerism and caring for the people. So perhaps can you tell me how it all started as a young man, being a bit disillusioned with the church, you think? You thought, I can do something different.
Gillian, years ago, I'm from Naas in County Kildare, and I came from a family where we had our own problems. It was fairly dysfunctional, and there was a lot of addiction. And so when I was younger, I remember thinking, is there anything can be done in this area? So I was at church one day, and I think I tried to do a deal with God by saying, instead of going to church, can I do something else? So I started to volunteer in the Salvation Army Cedar House Hostel, which was a homeless hostel just off O'Connell Street. And instead of going to church, I went there, and that was my church. And while there, I started to meet amazing people, wonderful, amazing people. A lot of them who were low threshold, they were living on the streets. So they were coming into the hostel to get food, clothing, and then overnight shelter. So I noticed a lot of them were in addiction. So I also noticed that over time, they were going into various centers, and the centers were 3 and 4 and 5 weeks, and they were coming back, and they were as good as new. And I was delighted. But then 2 weeks later, I'd meet them, and they would have relapsed because they're going back to the very place they came out of addiction in the first place. And so it's like where you got sick, you shouldn't return when you're better. So I noticed there's a bit of a gap here. And that's how I started thinking, along with a friend of mine, Phil Thompson, who founded Tigan with me. I started thinking, can we make a difference here?
So tell me about some of the principles that Tigan is founded upon. So not going back to where you've been sick originally. That makes sense, because there's a lot of triggers, one imagines. So, and what year was this, may I ask?
This was in 2004, 5, 6, in or around those periods. And the first thing we did was my mother passed away, and we bought a bus. And I converted the bus into a restaurant type of facility for homeless people, okay? A lot of your listeners would probably know it, Gillian, because it was called the No Bucks Cafe, like Starbucks, except this was no bucks. And we had it done up like Starbucks. How they didn't sue me, I don't know. But I then got a bus license, and I was able to drive the bus 4 nights a week under Cleary's clock we used to park. And
so you're the driver. You're the driver.
I'm the driver. I'm the driver as well. And the community Gardaí were amazing, because they basically said, yeah, we're going to work with you, because a lot of the people you're reaching out to, we know personally, and they had a good heart for it. So we used to pull up under Cleary's clock. We had a big awning. This was a big 50-foot coach, this thing. And then we used to put out the awning and tables and chairs. People used to come on, and somehow the homeless got what we were doing, and they connected with us. Over the next 3, 4, 5 years, the homeless people that we helped were the people that became the volunteers, and they ran the No Bucks Cafe for us.
So this is actually a trend of what you're doing in Tigan too as well. So people come along, and when they become the volunteers, were they still homeless, or had they got some sort of accommodation at that stage?
I'm going to give you an example of one guy. He came along with his brother. He was living in Stephen's Green, okay? And they had a sort of a makeshift sort of a wooden thing in the bushes in Stephen's Green. So when Gillian was in the Shelburne Hotel, these guys were in the bushes outside, and she never knew. But interestingly, they came along, and they hadn't even got the leaving cert. And we started to engage with them. They didn't have any addiction. They just had trauma and in their own lives, and they came undone. They were 19 years of age, twin brothers. So we started to get them involved, and they started to volunteer. Over time, they started to get involved in education through our Tigan educational program with IT Carlow. So we got them onto a certificate, a diploma, a degree. Both of them have now got their master's degrees. And 2 weeks ago, President Higgins was down opening a new centre for us in Jigenstown. And who's the manager of that centre? Only one of those twins. And so you sort of go, if you give an opportunity to somebody who's never had it, packaged in the way we package it, it can change their lives. And it's like what Einstein said. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, that fish is doomed. So we try to package Tiglin's rehabilitation, its education, its community employment in a way that is not a cookie cutter approach. It's no one size fits all, but it's person-centered around the individual.
You are actually making a huge amount of sense to me. I remember years ago, I have a problem with labels, right? I don't like labels. I think they're they're bad. And even good ones are bad because then you have to live up to them. But I remember hearing, like, especially with the AA and the whole idea about with addiction. And I know those two brothers weren't, but with addiction, the idea was that, it was based on some theory about rats, and they were given a choice of cocaine water and plain water in a cage, and they all killed themselves. They drank the cocaine water. And then and that's the basis of addiction. You will always do it regardless. And then Rat Park came along. You'll be familiar with this, that the guy, I don't know the man's name, but he reset up the experiment, but he gave them a park. So the rats had this park, and they had swings and rides and the whole thing. They never went near the cocaine because they had things in their lives. So what I love what you're doing, because too often, the lazy thing is addiction is addiction is addiction. Whereas, do you know what? There's many things that funnel into it, and there's many ways to funnel out. I think that's what you're offering your young people.
And that's what I always say to the guys. You're not going to be able to change the direction of the wind, but you can adjust the sails. And at Tiglin, we get the guys, the girls in, and it's never too late to adjust the sails. And you need coping mechanisms. You need fellowship to support you. You need peers that are in the exact same place as you were or are, and they have moved on and progressed. Do you know, Gillian, I was in a restaurant a number of weeks ago, and I had people with me who wanted to know more about Tiglin. I was sharing all about it, and I brought them to this restaurant, and we went out and had a lovely meal. What they didn't know was the person who owned that restaurant is a person I met on the streets outside Houston Station begging with a cup 10 years ago. And I love that because it's my secret sort of, I know the fuller story here. They don't. But to me, that's what keeps me going. I am amazed at when people get an opportunity to change their life. You just see it rolls, and it makes a difference.
Wow. So when did you, I love this approach because it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? I think that too long there's been this very narrow-minded interpretation of addiction. And I know in our in particular, we have problems with alcohol, then we have heroin, and now cocaine is a blight on the country, I know. But even so, it's like a war on addiction as opposed to let's focus on the person, please. It's a whole different approach. So tell me, when did Tiglin as a building, the actual function set up?
Okay, so when I was working and volunteering in the Salvation Army on a Sunday with my friend Phil Thompson, I had already spoken to my solicitor to say, if you see a property for sale, if there's anything you think is suitable, I would be interested in setting up a facility. And I'm an auctioneer by profession. I was at a charity auction in Clontarf Castle, and I was there as the auctioneer. And this judge, who probably your listeners will know, Judge Gillian Hussey, this lady, she's as tough as nails.
Yeah.
Anyway, Judge Gillian got up and she said that she would like to set up a men's centre. If there's anybody out there, she needs help. So I thought, okay. So I got up, did the auction, and of course I got a bit giddy and made a few remarks about the judge and how tough she was. So she came up to me afterwards and she said, hello, she said, may I tell you, you're the rudest man that I've ever met. Make sure you never lose that talent. And I just thought, this is something interesting. So the two of us became the best of friends. I contacted her and I said, listen, this is my vision with Tiglin, with setting up a rehab center. And a place has come up for sale called Tiglin. So she is the patron of Tiglin, and she got together with us and she soldiered with us. And a wonderful, wonderful lady. Your listeners probably know she's the one who put John Gilligan away. A lot of high profile people. This lady, she's no shrinking violet.
And Tiglin is in Greystones?
No, Tiglin was the old mountaineering center in the middle of the Wicklow Mountains. And when we bought it, it was called Tiglin Mountaineering Center. So people said, oh, what are you going to call your rehab center? And I said, oh, we'll call it Tiglin, because that's the name that's on it. Mm. And so literally, that's how we called it Tiglin.
And what year was that?
That was in 2008.
And does Tiglin mean anything in Irish, in English? Is there?
A few people have said it means House of the Glen.
Okay, appropriate. So you set it up, although the idea was at a men's rehab, but it's actually, is it men's and women's, or has it evolved into both sexes?
Right. So we set up a men's first of all, and then what we did was we found there was women needed as much help as men. So we set up a women's rehab in British Bay, and that's a beautiful facility. And that is overlooking the beach, and it has 14 ensuite rooms, and with its own private beach. It's amazing. And so you have the men's in the Wicklow Mountains, surrounded by 3,000 acres of forestry, then with its own football pitch and polytunnels. Then you have the women's on the beach in British Bay. So I believe it's God-given the way our centres are therapeutic, even in their location. And I mean, I would love, the programs themselves are set in wonderful areas geographically.
Mm. And are they led by, do you have like professional leaders who are doing this, or how do you put together the professional help?
One of the first persons I contacted was a doctor called John Nathan. He was the government doctor who put together the methadone program. He wrote an article in the Irish Times in 2008 about how the methadone program is not working for everyone. So what he was saying is that people are going on methadone and they are staying on it for 20 years. He said that is not the purpose of methadone. So what he did was he was advocating that there has to be an abstinence program, etc. He was on our board for the very start. So we have professionals. We have Dr. Emmanuel Aguirre, John Nathan, and we have a psychiatric nurse, Andy O'Connell. All of these provide the medical expertise, but then all of our staff are fully qualified. And a lot of people are well-meaning and want to help out. But I'm always of the opinion that if you're flying to London in the morning and the pilot introduces himself and said he's well-meaning and he really wants to look after you, you're delighted, but you want to know, does he have a flipping license to fly the plane? Is he trained? So I'm always of the opinion, no matter how well-meaning people are, I want to see the certificates. I want to see the professionalism, because at the end of the day, you are dealing with vulnerable adults.
And so how do you fund these two centres?
Okay, so at the moment, we are being funded by funded. We get 300,000 a year from task forces, drugs task forces. And what they have is they sponsor beds and staff. We also get part funded by community programs, which is the community employment programs. And what happens there is they provide CE, community employment places on the center. So that works out brilliant. And then we also do fundraising. We do a lot of we do social enterprise and what else? I'm trying to think. We do all sorts of stuff, but I'm always networking. So what I do, for example, I'm involved in transport, and I notice a lot of people that I move. So, for example, I moved the Intercontinental Hotel in Ballsbridge. When I was moving them, we got talking, and I said, "What are you doing with all the single beds They gave us all the single beds for the centre. We were moving golden pages. If you go into our men's centre, all of the windows and doors at the front of the centre, they're all from Golden Pages building in Bagot Street. If you go into our place in Carrigeaton, all of the furniture is from Twitter. So I'm always, and they're my business contacts, which by default have helped me out. So it's been amazing when you see the way people have got together and really helped.
And tell me about the Rise on the Cove, the little cafe that where we met some time ago.
So the Rise at the Cove, your listeners, if they know Greystones, when you go over the Bray to Greystones walk, what happens is you come down into the marina and then you walk around by the seafront and you have a big blue building and there's a small pink building overlooking the beach. When we were doing the 34 units of social housing for the men coming out of rehabilitation, we decided, what about that building? What can we do? So we set up a small kitchen and we did barbecues. And then our CEO, Phil, who's quirky, he says, what about a social enterprise for guys who have come through the residential but haven't moved on to education and are finding it difficult to get jobs? It will be a place where they can train as baristas and then at least they can go on to other employment. So we partnered with a guy called Gavin Murphy from Greystones. And this guy, he just got what we do. And he's an expert in coffee roasting and all this, totally outside of my frame of reference. But he then spoke to the guys who are living here. He asked if there's anybody who would put themselves forward as paid employment to become a barista. So 4 guys put their hands up. Those 4 guys became baristas. They became part of the community. They became people that were being poached by other cafes. And the whole thing worked a treat. And not only did it work a treat, but I was hoping that it would break even. This thing has broke all records. It has been amazing. So you come in at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning or at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. You have people in their dry robes. You have people that are working locally. And you have all of our guys. And now you have our Ukrainian refugees all together as a community, hand in glove. And it works brilliant. And it's called Rise at the Cove. So make sure, if you haven't been there, any of your listeners, it's certainly worth a visit.
And I think also there's a lot of local produce which is sourced as well. So it's all organic, local, it's I mean, that cafe, it's been profiled in national publications. The Sunday Business Post, I think, did a 4-page thing on it there recently. We've had various interviews done there. All of the lads have become celebrities in their own right from Rise at the Cove. And I mean, I meet people in business and I say, can you meet at the Tigan Cafe, Rise at the Cove? And they go, is that to do with Tigan? So people are coming in here to buy their coffee, not because they want to support a charity, because the coffee is bloody brilliant. It's the best coffee you can get. The cakes and the burnt cheesecake, it's not burnt by mistake, it's actually burnt cheesecake. On purpose.
It is amazing. And I'm putting on kgs by coming in.
Well, I was there earlier. I was so impressed. It's beautiful. And you're right. You feel people coming up from the beach, their dry robes, and they're having their coffees and they're getting their pastries. But it's like, what really is so impressive, and again, what I love about your thinking and what Gavin has done there as well, is that this is a very special cafe. This is not I'll pity these poor people and I'll spend my good citizen euros here. People go there because the coffee is brilliant and the food is excellent and the service, the baristas are amazing. How many men have gone through it so far? Is it just 4, or are they clamoring to get in?
No, that we have a queue of people trying to get in now. But what we're also doing is, you probably have seen, there's a little unit being put on the side. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our Ukrainian guests have come to me and said, Aubrey, is it possible to get work, etc. So I said to Phil, is there anything we can do? So there's a supporter of ours that has an ice cream company, and he now has got behind us. And we're putting in an ice cream unit so that the Ukrainians can run that for the summer.
That's amazing. Would you know what I love too as well? It's all about, let's be sensible, let's be practical, let's do things. Let's make people feel good, give them a purpose. and a reason to get up and a reason to get out, and a pride in what they do. And it's not hand-me-downs. It's not, oh, I'm going to look after you and be good to you. It's here's an opportunity, which makes a difference for obviously for human beings. So tell me,
and that's what makes the difference.
It's a huge.
You know, Gillian, I listened to Lady Gaga when she had that film Shallow out recently. And what she said is she had a horrific traumatic experience growing up, and she was assaulted and in the most vicious way, etc. But she said you can walk into a room and there's 100 people there, none of them get you. But she said if you can find one person that believes in you, that makes all the difference. So what I try to see with Tiglan is we believe in the person. So whether you're a vulnerable person that comes from the cohort of addiction, or whether you're homeless, or whether you're a refugee fleeing a war-torn area, we have staff, we have volunteers, and we have facilities that actually believe in you and give you a chance to recover and heal from whatever you're trying to escape.
And then you've done another project too in Jigginstown Manor. Tell me about this new project.
A lot of your listeners will remember 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, President Higgins was all over the news. Well, that was at our facility in Naas. This is a marvelous facility. It's in my hometown of Naas. It's called Jigginstown Manor. And it was put together because a group of businessmen in my hometown wanted to make a difference for the homeless in our community. So what we did was we specialized on youth homeless. We found there's a gap of young people who, when they're coming out of the care system at 18 years of age, they have no further supports. So if you're in a foster home, etc., the foster parents have no financial incentive to keep you. And nowadays, to keep young adults is expensive. So no, I'm not blaming any families, but I'm just saying the system is not there. So what we did is we said, okay, let's set up 12 units for young people coming out of youth homelessness, a majority out of the care system, and get them into a facility whereby they have their own door, but they have wraparound support. They have education, they have employment, we have cooking classes. I go in there and I have barbecues with them, and they're showing me how to do all of this stuff. And yesterday, we were invited to Oris and Uachtaráin, and I had one of the guys from there who had President Higgins visit his apartment a couple of weeks ago. So President Higgins invited him to visit his gaff up in Dublin, in the Phoenix Park. And we were there yesterday, and this guy, 19 years of age, he stood tall with Sabina and Michael D in the Oris, and he was as good as anybody else there. He's recently got a job with SuperValue. He's training as an SNA, and he's taking part in the course as well doing that. So I'm just saying, this is winning all around. And he's a guy, when I met him, he was living under a bridge, just under the motorway in Naas.
It is tragic, isn't it, when you think about, I'm a parent. Are you a parent as well, Aubrey?
I'm not, but I'm optimistic.
No, good to hear. But I'm a parent and also a child, obviously, of parents. But I would hate to think that, my child would be left. And we all know we're only 1 or 2 paychecks away from homelessness, even people who would be considered successful. I know that, put my hand up, I've been there, done that. But it's kind of frightening to think that there wouldn't be somebody there for my children to step in if there was something that went amiss. Because I say I've been on that road, been homeless, and it's quite scary, and I have lots of support. So if somebody has no support, what do you do? It's frightening.
Gillian, myself and my brother, we set up a food bank in Naas, and the reason we did it is because we had to use food banks when we were younger. And we realized how close you are to homelessness. Now, thank God I've been blessed in business, etc. But in the back of my mind, you're only one step away from it. You're one wage packet away from it. So what you try to do is go, oh, okay, how can we make a difference for those people that are in that situation at the moment? And I will say, you included Greystones, where we have taken in 97 Ukrainians. They've got together and they've helped our Ukrainian guests, and they've taken them as members of the family. We've the GAA, the tennis club, the local acting. They've all embraced them, and they've also done that with our guys and our girls graduating from Tiglan.
No, it's very powerful. And I think I think Ireland traditionally would be a caring community, and people would in the villages, they say it takes a village to raise, or a parish to raise a child.
Yes,
and then
absolutely.
I think we lost a bit of that up to the Celtic Tiger, and then everybody was scrambling around afterwards, I think, too, as well. And we know we have this President Michael D. Higgins at your launch had that savage attack on the government and looking at the homelessness situation here and things not being done. But sometimes, when I say a small thing, I don't mean it like that. What you and your colleagues are doing is huge, but it's also it's micro and it's significant, and it's creating these new opportunities for young people. I mean, it's a shame that what you're doing can't be replicated. I mean, have you lobbied government? Could you replicate what you're doing across the other counties?
Gillian, I recently ran for the Senate. Now, I've no idea about politics, but I was asked to run for it with the Trinity seat, the Vanabachik seat. Total new territory. I didn't even know what a tally was. But anyway, it was really interesting. And what I stood on was trying to make a difference in what we've already done. So when I spoke about housing, I actually spoke about the housing that we've already done. When I spoke about homelessness, I spoke about the homelessness, the cafes, etc., that we've set up. So when you say lobby, I have no idea what lobbying meant. So it sort of happened organically. Now, I didn't win, but I actually enjoyed the experience. And I think I got a very high vote for a person that is not even known. A lot of people know what we do, but they don't know me. And that's the way I've always liked it. With the election, you have to turn that on its head and you sort of go, okay, well, I've done this and this and this. So it's a little bit difficult. But I will say from that, the profile of what we do has made a difference. And we're working with different county councils to try and get more housing, more rehabilitation, more homeless services, etc. Last night, I was discussing with President Higgins about the new 6-unit modular housing that we're doing, which is going to be zero carbon. And that is going to be in Dublin. And what I'm hoping with that is that it actually will be the first of its kind, which is interesting.
Well, I think what's interesting too is what you're saying is that, and well done, by the way, in the Shannon run. I ran an European Parliament election, so I know what it's like. It's kind of funny to put yourself out like that. But what even coming back to is what you're doing is very practical, and it makes a difference. It's meaningful, and it's meaningful in terms of the results that you're achieving with your clients, with your friends, with the people who need it. If you could wave your magic wand, would you like all county councils to come and talk to you? Was that and could they follow? Because what you seem to be doing seems to be, I'm saying simple. It's obvious looking on the outside, but it seems to be a format that works.
You just said simple, and that is not an insult. It is simple. And what I found is when there's nobody shouting, even a whisper gets heard. So even Aubrey's efforts in the background with a group of volunteers, with Phil, it actually makes a difference. And so if you can replicate that and get a passion going in various communities, you make a difference. President Higgins, at the opening of our centre in Jigginstown Manor, he said, what every county council in Ireland should do before their next meeting is look at the agenda and look at what County Wicklow and County Kildare have done by looking at the Tigan housing facilities, which have won Irish Council of Social Housing Awards, as being an example of what every county can do. And Gillian, it's not hard. I'm a volunteer. And one thing, I've never taken a penny from the charity or anything like that. But I'm saying if I can do it as a volunteer, we can all do this. We can actually make a difference. And you can make a difference in the lives of so many.
Amazing. We have just reached the end of our program. It hurtles along. Making a Difference is the name of this program. You're